We can get started here. Hi, everybody. My name is Jacob Eckley. I'm the lead growth manager here at SpinFX IT. And today we'll be covering the hidden ROI of better payroll reporting. Now, before we dive into discussions here, there's some housekeeping things to go over. So this will be a 30-minute panel discussion. The session is being recorded. So the recording will be sent to all of you following the conclusion of the webinar. And also, please do ask questions. There's a Q&A box down below, and we will be getting to your questions following the conclusions of our discussions here towards the end of the webinar. And also, if you want to get in touch with us towards the end, please feel free to send us an email following. We can go into a little bit more specifics of your use case and figure out how to get your organization into a better payroll reporting strategy. Now, on top of all that, your experts today are Bob Ball and Brian Erickson. Bob is the Director of Partner Engagement here at SpinFX IT, and Brian is the Director of Client Engagement at SpinFX IT. Together, they have over 40 years of experience in the SAP payroll reporting space, and they've been proven leaders in the reporting space. So with all of that being said, Bob, I will hand this off to you.
Thank you, Jacob. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Just at the outset, I just want to give everybody some context on who SpinFX IT is. We are an exclusive SAP SuccessFactors partner. We only focus on SAP SuccessFactors, and so as a result of that, we really have no dilution in our services, our solutions, our resources, our expertise around optimizing SAP SuccessFactors reporting. All of our solutions are certified by SAP, and they're fully integrated to extend the native capabilities. And the value that we bring is around HCM, HR, payroll, and third-party data management, providing better access, synchronization, validation, reporting, and the ability to create and distribute critical HR, payroll, and third-party system data. We also use these tools to accelerate, simplify, and validate cloud migration. So those of you that are moving from legacy on-prem to the SAP SuccessFactors Cloud, our tools can help facilitate that as well. But ultimately, we enable companies to optimize their HR and payroll data reporting. So, Brian, I'm pleased to get some time with you today. I know you've got an extensive background, not only with SpinFX, but also with previous customers where you've used SAP reporting. Perhaps you'd like to just give us a little bit of background on your experience.
Thanks, Bob. Be happy to do that. So I've been working in that HCM space since about 1990, so it'd be about 35 years, and in all kinds of different roles, including customer roles, as you mentioned, but also in consulting roles, in projects, rolling out global projects for SAP implementations for HCM, as well as more recently in the context within SpinFX, helping to provide guidance and solutions, not only around reporting, but also data movement and migration to the cloud.
Thanks, Brian. So I'm sure if your experience, you've seen a lot of changes, and really the topic for today is why payroll reporting matters more than ever. What we're seeing is that in today's business environments, more companies are moving payroll from mostly a compliance task to providing more strategic intelligence. There's certainly a rising need for more automation and flexibility, and most companies are preparing, if they haven't already done so, for the shift to the cloud. So with this as the backdrop for today's discussion, I'd like to get your comments and feedback on some questions that we're hearing in the marketplace today. The first one, Brian, is when you look at payroll reporting in SAP right now as a standard, what does manual reporting actually look like to you?
Well, thanks, Bob. That's a great question. And it really highlights one of the main challenges that we have in the SAP environment with payroll, but also even with some of the other SAP HCM solutions, where, as you can see in this particular slide, it kind of shows you that there's a bit of a siloing of different reporting solutions as we're trying to bring data together from different components There's a lot of different solutions within SAP, within SuccessFactors to pull that data out. And what that leads to is a lot of manual work. As you mentioned, why manual? Because we're actually getting small slices of data that we then have to stitch together. And typically we see customers using Excel to download those bits of data, line them up in Excel, kind of pull them together. They may have some macros, or they may just do this as a kind of manual step each time they run the report. Then they need to do some transformations to that to make it ready for end users. And that's really where a lot of that time goes in. And the problems with that are that it's really not scalable. We only have so much time in the day to manually pull reports, to manually stitch them together and manually send them out. And so as a result, there's a lot of things that don't get done. And it's not really good value. It's not a strategy that's going to take us to maturity, so to speak, to the kind of payroll reporting that we're going to be able to handle some of those bigger business impact kinds of questions.
Sure.
But thankfully, there are some solutions for that. And go ahead. Ideally, what you're looking to be able to do with the reporting solution is to be able to pull everything together in an automated sequence. And that sequence is down at the bottom. It's just a 1, 2, 3, 4. We want to source the data from wherever it is, regardless of what system or what kind of tables it's in. We want to be able to transform that data. We want to be able to generate reports and distribute reports. And ideally, those should all be automated steps. We should be able to go through that whole sequence in an automated fashion. And the reason that's important is because when we set it up and we automate it once, we know that we can then rerun it many times. And it frees up that time that we used to be using to manually create reports. And now we can actually go and create new reports, new visualizations. And so this kind of an architecture is really important. And we're showing it based on a reporting engine, which is our own Easy Reporter. But you could also do this, and I've seen customers try to do this with like BI type solutions, exporting data into a data warehouse or a data mart where they can bring all this data together and then do things with it from there. But we need to find a way that goes beyond just the silos of information and really brings it together end to end in order to find that point that we're really looking for. What does mature look like when we're going to have that strong business impact upon the business? So this is kind of the precursor foundation to being able to do that, is understanding where data is coming from, whether it's on premise or in the cloud, and be able to just have that automated flow from end to end.
Sure, Brian. Thank you. So obviously, what we're seeing is that payroll data no longer just lives in a vacuum anymore. Um, how are you seeing organizations use payroll insights to power strategic projects across finance, HR, and IT, even the wider business plans?
Yeah, well, probably one of the biggest ways is in terms of labor costing and understanding where all that money is really going to and how to optimize it. And it's one of the company's biggest spends of information, whether it's feeding information in through compensation and being able to have a really good picture of how we're paying different groups of people and why, or whether we're getting back to some of the actual planning of manpower costs and then comparing that with the actual information. Having that dual picture of what the plan is and what the actual is really critical. And being able to see that and analyze it in real time, being able to pull the latest data and see it really clearly is very helpful. And SAP does a good job of collecting data, of organizing it and so forth, but not really in terms of being able to export or visualize that data in a great way. So really it's going to be mostly around the labor costing things that people are doing, also manpower costing and modeling, and then getting those plan versus actuals together. Those are kind of the more advanced items, but still even some of the basic things are really important for customers. Things like the compliance, as you mentioned, and making sure that what we're paying is actually accurate and compliant with the rules and regulations.
Sure. Yeah. Well, payroll has to be right, or else everybody
Mhm.
knows about it. And therefore, payroll is really some of the cleanest and most trusted data in the organization today. So, with that being said, and the importance of it, how are you seeing payroll reporting shift from more of just the compliance function to more of a strategic intelligence asset?
Yeah, so that's true. It really should be the most accurate and tested and clean data because we spend a lot of time validating it and running those kinds of operations. But I think we really see two types of companies. One where that's still a struggle. It takes a lot of time to be able to do all those checks and balances that need to be done, and that really takes up the majority of the time. And that um, the company just doesn't have time to address the higher value add issues. When that kind of thing happens, then it really is an issue again of scalability, as we talked about. Like, how do we get that scalability coming through, and just that flexibility in pulling data, as I talked about. The I think we're seeing that kind of in a couple of areas, and one is that integrations are still key. The ability to see information across different systems and keep them in sync is very important. HR is kind of a hub of many, many different systems within the company, whether that's stuff around benefits or in compensation or all kinds of external systems that have to keep in sync with who's current, who's terminated, those types of things. And just keeping the mechanisms running is kind of a full-time job for some people. So automating that gives a lot of value. Then also, as we talked about before, just the understanding the cost of the business and where it's going. We've seen some good things around analysis of overtime and understanding that not just in terms of the overall dollar spend, but really how does that break down among the business functions and the jobs and the activities that the company is doing, and how are we driving those costs, and being able to model that for expanding our business and for how we're keeping profitable among the various things that we're doing.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and if that being, the kind of intelligence that can be gleaned from payroll data, with the appropriate reporting processes and maturity in place, can you share any like business outcomes, real world outcomes, maybe that you experienced or in your experience with our customers have seen when they've been able to really automate and bring payroll reporting to a mature level?
Yeah, boy, I think one of the key things that we begin to see, and it's a real indicator of making that shift, is when this type of reporting, the payroll analytics and the HR analytics, really begin to be consumed and become a player or have a seat at the table, I guess, with the senior leadership in terms of how they're making decisions about moving the business, and that they're relying upon that data to help them make those business decisions. That can be investment and in expansion, those types of issues that are going on, and really understanding how those drivers are playing into the business.
Mhm. So there's a lot of focus on kind of workforce planning and analytics. How does payroll reporting feed into that, and how can Spinifex help those types of solutions?
Yeah, well, when you talked a little while ago about the core data being the cleanest that it is, that's really where things start. We have to start with clean data. Having accurate, trustworthy data is key. And it's not only key to have accurate and trustworthy data, but to be able to get that data out in any format that we need to. And that's kind of the foundation. And some customers are still stuck in that foundational level. And it's very important because for things like uh, you may have be facing some kind of a lawsuit or something like that, to be able to get at that data quickly and efficiently and to be able to prove what you're doing is accurate and clean is critical. And oftentimes that means bringing that data together in new ways, formats. The other side of that for analytics, as you were talking about, is we really need to be able to bring all that data together and bring it out of the system quickly. And 20 some years of working on reporting solutions, I'm thinking of really BI and data warehouse type solutions. There's been a lot of promises to the HR teams, and in most organizations that I've worked with, the IT teams will say, "Hey, we're going to bring you a data warehouse. You don't have to worry about reporting." And the fact is that it's a very big challenge for two main reasons. One is um, HR data can change fairly frequently, like what we want to focus on and what we're reporting on can change. And as a result, it means that as we're designing our data warehouses or analytics solutions, that they'll often go through numerous revisions. And so having the ability to respond quickly to changes and new requirements and new versions of things is really critical. And we can't wait for a lot of technical processes to happen on the back end to be able to create new extracts through ABAP or to be able to remodel the data warehouse and bring in BI resources and have expensive projects. We need to be able to be responsive and really move quickly to address the business needs that are there. And we've seen the most successful strategies be those that really have quick delivery on new analytics and new um, visualizations of that information so that they can quickly answer the questions and move on.
Mm-hmm. Right. And you mentioned ABAP, right? So that's kind of a specific term to SAP, but maybe you could talk a little bit about that coding language and how that is used in the absence of other tools like SpinFX Easy Reporter, and kind of what impacts that may have to an organization.
Right. So ABAP is something that you kind of love and hate because it's the foundational language of the system itself. You can do so much with it, but there's also a lot of trade-offs that come with it. And one is that it's a very specialized skill set. In fact, in some recent calls we had with SAP and people that were looking to outpace SAP, they're really talking about the need to staff up with ABAP resources and really resources that are specific to HR ABAP, which is even a subset of ABAP. And so that can be a difficult resource to find and somewhat expensive, but also there's a lot of hidden costs with that. The biggest one to me is the lack of responsiveness. If you want to create a new report there, you're really talking about weeks of time to be able to bring the whole process together because there's a very set process of, first of all, you've got to explain to that technical resource what it is you're trying to do. And that gap is really probably one of the biggest gaps to actually bridge. But once you've done that, there's the whole build of the report, the testing as you go through all of the different systems that you need to move that through to promote it up into production. And then any changes have to go back through that whole cycle again. And so it's a very time intensive and labor intensive process to be able to build reports. And it's not really timely. Oftentimes we have key issues that pop up, but we need to get that information and analysis really quickly. And so
Mhm.
that's a big challenge in the whole process. And so having a reporting engine that's more user friendly and where end users can actually do their own extract or their own visualization of data any way they want it is really kind of the nirvana that we're looking for, that we're trying to achieve, to just be able to get whatever information you want without needing to resort to programming.
Mhm. Thank you. So, if organizations today are looking to gain some quick wins around their payroll reporting, what kind of investment and how would you see an investment in the right tools and processes enable that?
That's a good question. And it's the answer to it, I think, is a little bit counterintuitive. Like the best way to get quick wins is to step back and to think about where you want to end up. Uh, and that's going to determine a whole lot because creating a good strategy, a good reporting strategy is foundational. We talked earlier about the need to envision what maturity is going to look like and how are you going to get there. When we're at that first slide that we were showing with all of the different siloed data sources and the mishmash of things going around, as long as we're in a process of having people manually move data around to create reports, we're never going to get to a point where we've got any reasonable volume of reporting or information coming out that's going to assist the business there. So that's kind of the number one issue there, is they're trying to deal with building up a capability or maturity to get there. Now, once you make that decision in terms of the reporting strategy, then it determines what's possible in terms of quick wins, right? Um, if you're doing something like a data warehouse, there's not a lot of quick wins there. That's a big long-term investment.
Mhm.
But if you're doing something more like the Easy Reporter solution that you mentioned, there's a lot of pre-developed content in that, and you can just turn it on within a day or two and have content flowing out for the things that you want to be doing. So that's a an easier way to get there, a quick win if you want, to be able to start getting information out. And that can be powerful even from, the first week of the project.
Mm-hmm. Great. So, with that in mind, what would be your recommendation or best practices for HR and payroll leaders to be doing now to prepare for kind of that more strategic, data-driven future?
Right. I already mentioned, and so I'll just mention again quickly, is the strategy, pulling together reporting strategy, understanding how you're going to get from A to Z. Um, but equally important, and something that's often overlooked, I think is maybe the key thing, is not just about the system. How do we get the data out of the system? But it's about the people. How do we get the people to understand the data that's driving their business, the right questions to ask, and then the right ways to present that information to people? That's the biggest challenge that comes up in most projects. And it's also the reason why I think nearly every HR data warehouse project I've seen customers do has been, if not a failure, at least a big challenge. Because, as I mentioned earlier, that data is changing a lot, but also the maturity of the end users is not always there. They don't always know exactly what they want to see or how they want to see it. And so oftentimes the first version of a data warehouse gets developed, and then they come back and say, well, what we really need is more like this. At that point in time, you're going back and doing a lot of redesign, and the redesign is even more expensive than the initial rollout in a lot of cases. And so you
Mm-hmm.
get in this kind of pattern of designing, redesigning. The way around that I see be really successful is when we're taking smaller incremental steps. We're building some analytical solutions. It might be a point solution, like looking at manpower plan versus actual. And we did that recently with a customer where um, they would just pull the information from SAP through an API, and that report was running all the time. It would populate into a spreadsheet. The senior management team would review that spreadsheet. The business partners would update that spreadsheet with some of the information about, you know, where's the gap, where's the difference between what our plan is and what our actual is. And maybe there's recruitment going on, maybe there's some redundancies that are happening. Anything could be there, but it gave them a real clear view of the information, and they love that, and so they keep asking for it, and then they keep growing it from there. So building a demand based approach, don't just go out in there and build it and think they'll come, but actually work with them, engage with the business, and start learning together. What are the things that are really useful? What are the things that are driving the business? And to be able to respond quickly to that. Again, it's that response time of being able to just turn things around within hours or a day or something, and not waiting for 3 weeks to develop some kind of new report or new data mechanism or model or something like that to be able to answer some of those key questions.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you've had this type of discussion and engagement with customers before, Brian. Can you talk a little bit about, how that would work from, your team's engagement?
Sure. So you're right. We have done a lot of that, and I would say in the current environment, a lot of that also um, needs to bring into scope some of the key items, and that is like, how do we connect between operational reporting and analytical reporting? There's these kind of different spheres of things that are working. How do we bring that mix together so they're really complementary? They're reinforcing one another. And then also, how do we make that future proof as we're moving things towards the cloud, and we're looking at that? How do we future proof our investments so that they're not going away, that they're not getting adding additional cost as we migrate and do other things? And we're working with a few dozen customers at the moment as part of their migration plans to the cloud, and have seen that over and over again in terms of how customers are addressing those issues. And oftentimes reporting kind of gets pushed to the side in terms of how that process is working. It may not have been a part of the initial scope of work for a lot of customers, but it does become something that's critical as they go through the project. And we like to take opportunities, and have done in a few cases, to really sit down and look at that reporting strategy. How do we assess that? How do we look at bringing those different components together to take you not just to go live, but to maturity? And
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, if we're going to take the time to make this move and to make these investments, we want to make sure that we're setting the stage for success going forward, not just getting to the point where we can replace the old system, but getting to the point where we can really thrive.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. Jacob, just a time check. Do we have questions from the field that we can address?
Yeah, so all of you, once again, if you want to put any questions in the Q&A section, we will give ourselves a little bit of time to answer. But as of right now, let me check. Looks like we do have one. Let me read that off to you guys. Okay, so if you could give one piece of advice to HR leaders looking to sell the value of better reporting to executives, what would it be? That first of all, that's a great question. Yeah, how would you guys sell this internally to
Hmm.
executives that may not know the value of it quite yet?
That's really hard. I'm really torn between two different messages. One is build for maturity, but I've beat that one to death, so we'll just put that one to the side at the moment. The other one would be what are we not doing? And I think a lot of times when we come in to justify something, we try to think about, okay, we're doing these things as taking this cost. How do we do that more efficiently? But oftentimes in this sphere of reporting, it's the things that we're not doing. It's the things that we're not checking. It's the opportunities we're missing in terms of creating those strategic insights, in terms of really fine tuning the cost that we have around our manpower, in terms of being able to turn things around quickly, get the information that people need to really run the business based on data and not based on guesswork. So I think those are probably the two things, but I'll lean more on the second one. If we're really talking about justifying, I think it's more about what are the things we're not doing, and that will lead almost naturally into the whole discussion about maturity. Well, what does it look like to find maturity? How do we get there?
Yeah. So, Brian, it kind of sounds like there's a real opportunity for efficiency gains through automation, through more accurate data, more of a mature reporting process that then would allow those valuable resources to focus on other tasks, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we've seen customers who doing manual reporting, kind of struggle to get a couple dozen reports together on a routine basis, and going from that to 400 to 600 reports that they can do, and just growing those internally with their own resources and creating those kinds of um, data visualizations. And it could be for key critical stuff. It could also be for things that were maybe just a one-time need, but it's so easy to do it. You can create those views, get the information that you want to, and then automate those so that they're running on a routine basis and just alerting you when there's things that need to be adjusted or tweaked or changed. Um,
Hmm.
one of the things that we did kind of gloss over a little bit, and it's one of the key concerns in the SAP ecosphere, is that there is a real divide between the payroll system and the other HR solutions, that they're on different platforms and they don't really talk to each other. There's some integration that happens that's built in during the implementation projects, but from a reporting standpoint, they really don't talk to each other, and even ABAP can't bridge that gap. So that's another key area that needs to be addressed within that reporting strategy, is how do we bring that all together in a way that we can still automate, because it's not enough just to have those silos of information. We really do need to bring it together. And there's a couple of key strategies to doing that. ABAP is one. We see data warehouses as a part of that. We see reporting engines like our Easy Reporter as one of those types of strategies. And really understanding what works for your company and why is really key. But really, a manual reporting strategy isn't going to really help in the long run. It's not going to help anyone get there. Yeah.
Not really a strategy at all, right?
No,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Okay. Jacob, I think over to you.
All right, yeah. Well, with that, we are at time. So first of all, I want to thank you all very much for attending. Once again, I will be sending out the recording of the webinar to all of you, just so you can review it. And if we didn't touch on any questions that you have, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to answer any of them in a little bit more longer format for you, and touch on some things that maybe we can find a way to help you with your better payroll reporting. Other than that, for SpinFX IT, I'm Jacob Eckley with Bob and Brian. Hope you guys have a great day. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.